All right,
Good
we have what's this? 192. I better put that in real quick. Okay, Current Geek 192. All right, we have audio and video. It's going. It's happening. It's recording. There ain't no stopping us now. It starts in 3.
Schlemiel.
Wrong intro, but nice try. All right, here it comes. 3, 2, 1.
I have
Current Geek!
Current Geek. Aha.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Current Geek. This is Current Geek, and welcome to the Autopilot Edition of the show. A chance for us to go back and watch the pilot episode of an old, classy, or geeky TV show, and then geek out about the show. I'm Scott. He's Tom. And this week, we're talking about The Office. That's right, the UK and the US one.
We couldn't pick just one.
No, how could we?
Well, and also, and we'll talk about this a lot more, it's the same script.
Right.
So it's kind of fun to watch them back to back to see how they changed in their interpretation of that script, because they had not only adapted it for the US, but they also had a different running time. So they made a few changes, a few massages. There's some improving that always goes on in these shoots. So some of the lines weren't delivered exactly the same. But yeah, it was interesting to. I've watched them both before, but I've never watched them both back to back like that.
I hadn't either. In fact, I was a huge fan of the British Office and watched that like crazy. And then the US one came out, and I warmed up to it and liked it just fine during its run. And never did I kind of cross those over. So this was weird to do that, actually, because there are moments where you're like, oh, this goes a different way, and it feels fine. But then they'll swing back around and the dialogue will kick in. You're like, oh, that's the exact same scene in the interview and the thing. It's really weird. Like
there were lots of times when it stuck out, but one that comes back to me right now is the exchange with Jan in the office in the office, where it's just Pam / what is her name? Judy.
Yeah.
The receptionist, the office manager, and the corporate person. Mm-hmm. And the lines are word for word. Like, I didn't get the agenda. It went in. Oh, it was the one you said to put in the round file. Like, everything is pretty much beat for beat.
Yeah. But
the deliveries between Ricky Gervais and Steve Carell are so different.
Yeah. More different than you think.
And it's a great example of how acting, is more than just reading the words on the page. Steve Carell plays it off as if like, oh crap, I got caught. Mm-hmm. She's outing me, and I need to just play it down like, oh, it was my brother's joke. It wasn't even mine. Let's just move on. Mm-hmm. Whereas Ricky Gervais plays it off as, well, I'm going to full on push the responsibility on the receptionist. Oh, come on, that was a joke. Mm-hmm. And it was my brother's joke. It's anyway, mm-hmm. Right? It's the same words, but entirely different emotional conveyances by the two different actors, both of which I thought worked great.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of like maybe we learned a little lesson here. It's like they had some sort of basic shell script and kind of knew generally where they wanted to go, and then it feels like they're just improvising their way through it. So, similar lines and all of that, but the presentation's different. Where there's a scene where Martin Freeman, who plays Tim in the original Office, is talking about, he's in one of those little personal camera moments, and he's talking about his job, trying to describe it, and then talks about how bored it makes him to even talk about it, how he's bored just talking
That's
about
another
it.
One. Yeah.
And then Jim does the exact same scene, but with a very different delivery, a little more giggly and embarrassed, and kind of just a different approach. And again, both approaches seem to be fine. It's just when you see them right next to each other like that, it's a very odd feeling to know that you're watching the same script.
It really is, and I can't emphasize this enough, a great example of what the actor brings, right? Because there are parts where there's improvisation, or Greg Daniels' involvement in the US version took it in a different direction on purpose. But these two examples that we've both given, it's the actor's choice, right? And maybe the director's saying, hey, do it this way. But Jim is sort of doing it like, I'm really boring myself. Like, I'm having a moment of self-realization. Whereas as Martin Freeman does it as like, it's really boring, right? Like, bringing you, like we agree, right? This is really boring. Like
Sure.
you see what I'm talking about now. And again, both ways of playing it work, but it's a different type of character in that is portrayed by these two different actors.
Yeah.
I found that fascinating.
Same. I think the show's eventually got kind of their own, or the U.S. version kind of got its own personality and kind of went its own way. And I think to this day, even these two episodes, if you compare them back to back, the British one is the more awkward, uncomfortable one. Like the one that's intentionally so, but just uncomfortable. Anytime anyone says anything to anyone, you're just like, oh my gosh, Ricky Gervais, you are grossing me out, or that would be the most uncomfortable thing you could possibly say in this scenario. And Michael Scott became more, I don't know, he had his awkward moments, but he was more of a clown and less of a kind of a sad a sad manager guy. It's hard to explain, but there's a difference between those two.
Well, I read at one point, and again, the usual disclaimers apply. We're not Office experts, so this is just us geeking out on it. But right. I read that they actually toned it down in the second season after getting some bad feedback from some of the viewers to say it was too awkward. It wasn't working. It was too uncomfortable. And I think that may be why the U.S. version did run for 9 seasons is they figured out a different appeal. The appeal of the UK office is look at this train wreck, right? And that's Ricky Gervais all over. That's what Ricky Gervais does. He makes you uncomfortable, says things that are uncomfortable in lots of different ways. And it's everybody look at the train wreck, right? It works for him. And the Office UK is brilliant that way. It is. And in these two examples, we didn't even plan it this way, but these two examples are perfectly emblematic of that. Ricky Gervais is in your face. Like, hey, no, I didn't do anything wrong. It was her. Whereas Steve Carell is more of, like you said, he's a clown. He's like, oh, crap, I got caught. Oh, I need to juggle. Oh, no, what do I do? And that they lean more into that characterization in later seasons of the U.S. version, which I think make it a more appealing series in a different way. Whereas the UK version went for technically 3 seasons, really just 2. The third season's just the Christmas special.
Right. And that's typical British stuff. Like always exactly. A little shorter. Greatest sitcom ever made, in my opinion, is Fawlty Towers, and it lasted 2 seasons, and then we're filmed like 6 years apart or something crazy. Like they're always a little bit more brevity over there, but over here, since we like to have our big 24 episode, 9 season series, I feel like they figured that out real quick so that our market could go the Steve Carell direction for a longer period of time, and it worked. But I remember when this thing was like on the spit, man, they were ready to freaking cancel this thing. Didn't do good out of the gate so much. My
theory, tell me what you think of this. My theory is when it was being the Ricky Gervais thing, again, remember, keep in mind, two and a half series, however you count it in the UK, that's 14 episodes, right?
Yeah, it's not much.
It was 12.
Something like
that. I think it's 14.
Yeah.
That is about as much as you can take of Ricky Gervais being that guy, right? That is as much David Brent as you can handle. And Tim Canterbury, Martin Freeman's character, is also a little. We had that example in the difference. Jim's a little more self-deprecating. Tim Canterbury is a little more like, WTF, man? Like, come on, which is very Martin Freeman.
Sure.
He plays that kind of character very well. And Gareth, who is the companion to Dwight Schrute in the U.S. version, is a little less in your face, right? He's just more of a lad. Not even a lad. I guess that's the wrong characterization, but he's just more of an amoral character. Whereas Dwight Schrute is very aggressive.
Yeah.
So you've got a more even keel of aggressiveness, I think, in The Office UK. Whereas in The Office US, especially after they toned it down in the second season, I think people identify it more as, man, I've worked there. Right. Nobody's really worked for David Brent. I mean, when you first see him, you're like, oh, I've had a boss say that kind of thing. Oh, I've been in that kind of situation. But nobody has ever been David Brent consistently, or it is very rare. Michael Scott he ends up being kind of a composition of many bosses I've had.
Yeah.
Because he's not horrible.
Right.
And because they give him a little bit of redemption, a little bit of empathy. where you're like, oh, that's why he does it that way. Oh, it comes from a good place. He's just really bad. It's insecurity. And it's like, suddenly, I think the appeal of The Office US is, and I wish more series would learn from this.
Right.
I think the appeal is, I've had that experience in a way that none of us have been cops, except for those of you who are our police people. You know, most of us have not been emergency services, firefighters, police, nurses, doctors. And even those of us who have been one of those things haven't been the others usually, right?
Right.
Usually only one of them.
Right.
So the other shows are an escape for you. And everything is an escape. And certainly none of us have been superheroes, except for you, the one. I won't blow your secret.
Sure.
So The Office is that rare thing where we all can identify it. The majority of us have worked in some kind of situation, if we've had a job at all, that is similar to some aspect of The Office.
Yeah, I agree. His boss archetype is an amalgamation of a lot of people I've worked for. And that's both the parts where you're like, oh, he's kind of lovably dumb, and, you know, he really probably shouldn't be in that position, but he's a nice guy, to the moments where he just drives you freaking crazy with whatever it is they're trying to do, like having a role play meeting, which happens a lot in The Office, where it gets up and tries to get people to understand issues like sexual harassment at the office, or you know, how to up their sales, and having him getting up trying to show people when he's really no more qualified than you are. Like, that is absolutely people I've worked for before. So I think that show here in the US quickly became very relatable by a lot of people. And I think there were a lot of people who've been in Pam's situation. There have been people who've been like Jim. There have been people maybe even like Creed, who are just kind of, there's always that weird guy in the office.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a little older. Nobody knows where he came from. Like, weird stuff like that. By the way, Creed is not in this pilot, which is a little bit weird.
No, neither is Mindy Kaling's character. She's a writer on this episode, on the staff, but she has not at this point joined the team. So yeah, we don't see. I'm trying to find her character's name. It's Kelly.
Kelly. No Kelly.
We don't see Kelly.
Who's the redhead?
Do we see Phyllis?
No Phyllis, or if we saw her, I don't remember. I looked.
Certainly no Meredith.
Yeah, no Meredith.
There's also a few people in the room when he makes the announcements about the layoffs that just aren't.
Yeah, we never see them again.
We never see them again. Yeah.
And it was also, they also did some of that. So the British one always did this thing where they would have a little bit of a scene, and then they'd show a weird camera angle in the office of just work happening kind of quietly. And then they'd stop and go do something else. And this American pilot did that a couple of times, and then kind of never again. You never saw them do this again. And
the documentary trope is hewed to much more closely, I feel like, in the UK run, whereas the US just, they never fully abandon it, but they sort of give up. Like, they also call attention, like, why would I do it with the cameras right there, right? They kind of stopped doing that within the first season too.
Yeah, and I kind of am torn on that. In fact, I remember there was a lot of complaining about this, because there were times, I mean, they still always did the trope of, let's look at the cameras if it's in here watching us, and they never really abandoned.
They always do the confessionals and all that.
Yeah, and they never abandoned the idea that it was happening, right? Toward the end of The Office, even the US office, they were like, all right, well, this documentary's wrapping up, kind of thing. So they always acknowledged it being there, but then they also did a lot of stuff that there's no way that was a documentary crew, and it's just a show and no big deal. But like, they'd go out to Dwight's farm, and something would happen in a certain sequence that would only ever be filmed like you would film a film and not a documentary. And it used to throw me a little bit. And I remember there was a lot of criticism about that. Like, well, why even have this extra character known as the camera that's always in the room that Jim can look at when he's frustrated or whatever? And when I became okay with it and 100% good with it is when that carried into Parks and Recreation, which they didn't even pretend was a documentary in terms of why they kept looking at this camera, or why they would do the closed room interview camera shots. But they just did them anyway. They used that template and built a very funny show around it, but never really acknowledged it. And for some reason, that's when I settled on it. It was like, I'm fine with it now. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't feel fourth wall-y. It's just something that, you know, someone in the group is going to look at and look at sarcastically because, oh my gosh, I can't believe so-and-so said a thing. And maybe it's just because I had it pounded into me by then, but I have to admit, it took a while. Like, the actual office, it was hard for me to deal with that.
Well, because they don't commit to it fully. So you're like, am I supposed to feel that this is weird for a documentary to be showing me? Right? Because it's not a faux documentary. It's almost like you're watching the rough cuts. You know, there's no intro, there's no trappings. So when they do call it out, it feels odd because you've kind of forgotten that was the case. Whereas with Parks and Rec, that never really calling out means that you never have that dissociation. So it could be a documentary, or it could just be you're a character that happens to be around in all these scenes, and when they look at you, they're just looking at you, and there's less expectation on that POV.
Yeah, and they also, you know, one of the problems, or one of the results of having your show go 7 seasons, sometimes you lose people. Steve Carell leaves the show toward the tail end of that thing. And I didn't enjoy those seasons very much because
9, by the way.
Oh, 9. Did I have that wrong? 9. Okay. 9.
Yeah.
You mean no in German, or 9 in
9
number? Okay.
Says Dwight Schrute.
But he takes off and leaves Andy in charge, basically, and it just kind of became a different tone.
Yeah.
And that's okay, and plenty of people stuck through it, and it was fine. And by then, Pam and Jim are married, and so that tension was gone. It was a new kind of tension. It was new couple having a baby kind of tension.
Yeah,
but,
Kimmy Schmidt is the receptionist.
Yeah, and she's great. She was a great find, and I'm glad that this propelled her forward to do other cool things. But it just kind of wasn't the same show anymore. And
Andy and her character, Ellie Kemper's character, were the new Pam and Jim, right? They were the new will they, won't they?
Right. It was a different take.
And Pam and Jim
twist.
became the married couple at work, which is really a character you didn't have in the first several seasons.
Sure. So I'm of the opinion that like season 2 through, I don't know, 4 are some of the best modern take on this kind of stuff in a very long time. One of the most uncomfortable scenes in television history, for me, came from The Office. You'd say, well, Scott, really? It's not like from American Horror Story or some kind of weird thing where it's all freaky? Nope. The most uncomfortable scene in television ever for me is the scene and the episode where Kevin brings a giant metal tub of his homemade chili and then proceeds to dump it everywhere. All over the office. He falls in it. He rolls in it in his suit. I don't know why, but it's the most anxiety-inducing scene ever. And worthy
because
of...
you realize someone's going to have to clean all that up.
I know. I can't stand it. Oh, my gosh. All I can think about is everything smells like chili. It's all in his suit. That carpet's never going to not have a big brown nasty stain in it.
Right.
And it's just freaking chilly. Oh, my gosh. That was so rough. And I don't remember any of the rest of that
The
episode.
Office is the progenitor of some of the most uncomfortable moments in television.
Yeah, I would agree, and it does it so deftly in this setting that we're all familiar with. So it's not like uncomfortable in a fantastic way, like a Game of Thrones scene where we're not sure if someone's going to get killed at the end or whatever. It's not like that. It's like it's worse because it's a place we know. It's a place we've been. Like the carpet, the walls, the copier, the fax machine, the CRT monitors, and this early stuff. Like I was there, man. That's where I was. That's where I lived every day. So having those things happen in that space is worse. Somehow worse.
Well, because it feels more real, right?
Yeah.
The drama comes from the fact that you can empathize. You've been in that kind of place, and so when Steve Carell or when Michael Scott is making a joke about Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
You're uncomfortable because you're like, no, just please make it stop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
no, I don't want to be around this. Like you're embarrassing yourself. It's awful, and it's closer to home than watching somebody in a gunfight on TV because, well, most of us have not been in a gunfight like that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you're showing the chili.
Yeah, it's a shortened version. Somebody made it seem like GTA, so when he lands on the ground, it just does that whole wasted thing and turns black and white. But anyway, it's hard to watch. I don't remember the point of it. I don't remember if this was a holiday episode. I don't know why he's bringing his chili. I don't remember anything else attached to it. I just remember him spilling chili and me going, "Oh my gosh, dude, I don't know if I can watch the show anymore." Like from then on, I did think about anytime we would stand in that space in the office, I'd go, "That's where the chili dropped, right there."
So from now on, if you and I are talking about someone who's really just making a mess of things and doesn't seem like they're gonna stop.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say, man, they're really spilling chili. You know what I mean?
Yeah. They're really spilling the Kevin. No, that doesn't work.
Yeah, spilling chili. Oh, they're going full Kevin.
You going full Kevin and spilling all that chili? Boy, you can do that a lot on Twitter. That's actually a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
All right. So back to the British one for a second, because I think it's important to look at this from this perspective. I remember when this was hot off the presses in the early 2000s, 2001, 2 maybe. The Office was a huge hit over here via cable and other methods.
July 9th, 2001 is when the episode Downsize, the first episode, aired on BBC Two.
Okay, cool. So early 2009 or in the summer there. And or 1, I didn't mean 9. 1 was the 9th as I was looking at. It was a big hit over there, but then it was a huge hit over here. And so now we got cult status. Now we have like maybe not quite Monty Python levels of praise, but you've got pretty heavy duty people.
Can I tell you an embarrassing story?
Please. If it
I
involves
heard about
chili,
The Office.
if it involves chili in an office, I can't wait to hear it.
So I was bringing my pot of chili to the office. No, I heard about The Office from my boss at Tech TV, who is very much not like Michael Scott, and he explained like, yeah, it's this documentary about what happens in the office, like real life stuff. Well, I missed the real life stuff, and I got this idea that at Tech TV we should do a show where we just filmed people interacting in the office and cut it together into a documentary like drama, because it would be hilarious. Of course, there are horrible problems with that, privacy alone, right? But this is in the .com boom days where we were putting webcams on everybody's desks and streaming them on the internet, and it was wild and woolly. Mm-hmm. And my boss had to very gently let me down and say, well, no, the show I was telling you about is fake. It's not a real documentary.
Well, that's better than you than hooking up a bunch of cameras and splicing footage together first. And then
I didn't just go out and start doing it, thankfully. But so that's how I found out about The Office UK. And honestly, I was less impressed because I had built in my head this expectation that they just went into a real office and like a real world kind of thing, right?
Sure.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, so it's all fake. So of course it's going to be funny because they can make it be funny.
Yeah.
I did end up watching it and enjoying it though.
Yeah, it's great. I like a good rewatch of the British Office. I'll do that now and again. But what I was leading to was, you get to when that happens, and then there's these rumblings and talk in late 2003. NBC is optioning and working with Gervais and Merchant on bringing it to the U.S., making a U.S. version, and it's one of the earliest examples I can think of. It just sticks out to me as one of the earliest examples of a lot of online backlash for something. Up till then, if something was controversial, like I don't know, the prequels for Star Wars, I got most of my people frustrated or talking about it or excited about it or whatever it may have been. That feedback loop was happening with flesh and blood people I either worked with or saw every day or some other method. It wasn't really, the internet wasn't the place I was getting that feedback from. It felt like this was the first big, even though it wasn't that big, but this thing that happens in famous entertainment that blew up forums that I would get loads of emails for, or whatever services were available that weren't here yet, like Facebook and Twitter weren't here, but other stuff, you started to hear about it on there. And that felt like a turning point to me, because it's
it was
really
all over Friendster and Orkut.
Yeah, so that's the dividing point for me, is the Office controversy, whether it should be made or not, or if they were playing with hallowed ground, or all the things people said about it. And then forward, everything has been like that since, and more intense as the years have gone by.
For devoted fans of The Office UK, too, the premiere episode of The Office US was a huge disappointment because it was the same script.
Right.
Like, there's only one other script that got translated. I think it's later on, episode 9 or so in the first season. So the rest of the series didn't suffer from that. But Greg Daniels made the decision to shoot the pilot, he says, because he didn't want to start from scratch trying to rebuild everything. I think it just saved him time.
Yeah.
I think they're like, most people aren't going to have figured out how to watch The Office UK, right? Because you didn't have Netflix, et cetera, back then.
Right.
And so we can get away with it and it won't be a problem. But for the people who really like the UK, they're like, it's just a ripoff. It's a ripoff of and they thought that's what it was going to be like from then on.
Yeah, I think that's I mean that was the impression I got as well. And I remember it was very much on the chopping block. Like there was all kinds of talk that we may not even get a full first season out of it. Things aren't going well, and then they stuck it out and they made it the most popular comedy on television. Sidian in the chat says you haven't really mentioned that The Office is the first major leap away from traditional 3 camera.
We weren't going to get there, Sidian.
He says that, but I'm not sure it was. I would argue that there was, well, it depends on your definition of major, but you and I have done shows, like we did a whole thing on the Larry Sanders Show, which was absolutely a big tear away from the 3 camera sitcom format. Like, I don't think this was first by any stretch.
Sidian is right, though. It is the biggest one to have done that. Like it was a departure for a show, a massive sitcom, to do it single camera. I mean, it's a cinematography achievement because they never break it.
Right.
They always do single camera, which is really complex. There are scenes that they decided not to write after all because they're like, we can't shoot it single camera. They could have easily said, well, for this one we'll do multiple cameras, and they didn't. They wanted to keep that look. And you know, big congratulations or props to Randall Einhorn, the cinematographer, who was able to pull that off as he designed that way of shooting.
Yeah, which is, I'll give it credit. It deserves it. I mean, even shows like Arrested Development came later. Not much later, but, you know, a little while later. I don't remember what year that was. 03, I think. But yeah, like, this
03 for what?
For Arrested Development, which was another example of a non-Seinfeld setup. You know, single camera, more like a movie sort of approach. And I think that we're better off for all these changes. Like, give The Office whatever credit we want to, but just generally speaking, I feel like we're in a better place because of that. You could actually argue MASH is the first non-3 camera setup comedy that...
They did 3 cameras, though.
Well, did they, though?
They did a lot of single camera shooting, like out when they were running the helicopters and stuff to give it that feel. But most of it was multiple cameras.
Because when I think of 3 camera, I think of like the Seinfeld set where it's 3 cameras pointing in on the apartment set and on the whatever other set, and then cutting between the 3 with a live audience. Like, that's what I think of as that. Maybe I have the wrong definition of what a 3 camera.
Well, single camera just means you never change camera angles without a camera move or an edit.
Oh, I see. Right.
Yeah.
So maybe
so 3 cameras means at the same time I can have multiple shots and edit between them or cut between them. Apparently, after MASH was a single camera situation comedy, according to Wikipedia, but not MASH itself.
Oh, that's interesting.
Oh wait, no, MASH did single camera. It's on here too.
All right, so that's on there as well. So
you're not crazy.
Okay.
I don't think they always did single camera, but I could be wrong about that.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's just
Private Benjamin.
Well, is that a TV show? They make a TV version of that?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought there was just a movie. I didn't know they made a TV show.
No, it was like trying to be MASH, right? Like, well, if MASH can do it, Private Benjamin could do it.
Oh, I had no idea.
Griffith's show was apparently single camera. I mean, there's a lot of single camera situation comedies according to this list on Wikipedia.
Because
Curb Your Enthusiasm is another one.
Yeah, that would be a good example of one. See, and that's what I would. It's anything where there's cuts and edits and stuff, and then with the 3 camera thing, I think it's just when everyone's moving simultaneously, and if you cut from one camera to the other, doesn't mean there can't be edits because they may be in post or whatever. But like if Kramer's getting up from a chair, he gets up, and the latter half of that movement is switched to camera 2. I think that's what it is.
No, you know what? I take everything I said about MASH is wrong. In this episode. In the MASH episode, it was right.
Yeah.
I probably said, like, and what's crazy is it was a single camera in that episode. I can't remember half what I say anymore.
Yeah, that's fine. No. This is good. It's educational for us because I came in here
The Bad News Bears was single camera. I loved that show.
Wait a minute. They had a TV version of that too?
Yeah, they took the TV movie and they spun it off into a couple seasons, 79 and 80.
This is why we need autopilots, because I didn't know any of this existed. We should watch both of those things, see how those turned out. Ooh, I don't know, man. Private Benjamin. That doesn't sound like that lasted very long. Can't imagine it did that.
No, I don't think it was a big hit. Actually, let me look. Where did that go?
Man,
Private Benjamin. It was not Sally Field either.
No, or not Sally Field. You mean
neither one were Sally Field.
No, neither. Not Sally Field. You mean
it was 81 to 83.
You mean she's oh?
It was Lorna Patterson.
What was the movie one though?
The movie of the same name with Goldie Hawn?
Goldie Hawn is who I'm thinking of.
I love how I got it wrong and I made it look like you couldn't remember. That's a magic trick.
I think we were both doing just fine on both those counts. You'd gotten her wrong and I couldn't remember her name.
Yeah.
But yeah, like someone in the chat says, I clearly didn't watch a lot of TV. I disagree, Ken from Chicago. I watched a ton of TV, but maybe I may have stayed in my lanes a lot at that age. Like, it's Knight Rider, it's Magnum PI, it's Manimal. Like, I'm not allowed to go veer off into what my grandparents are watching or whatever. That's a bad characterization, but I think that was part of it. Yes, Mrs. Kurt Russell is Goldie Hawn. They're still together.
So Private Benjamin or Bad News Bears pilot for next time?
Oh my gosh, dude. I mean, it's an embarrassment of riches. Let's see. How about
Bad News Bears? The problem would be like, well, but there was a made-for-TV special. Is that really the pilot? Private Benjamin's going to be straight pilot.
That's a straight pilot. We should do that.
All right.
I don't know why I'm so curious about that one because I wasn't even like into the movie. Like this was all for someone else at the time, but something's fascinating about that. So let's do that.
All right. Yeah.
I like these weird was a movie, try to make a TV show out of them things. I find that, especially the failed ones. I think that's super interesting.
Well, because there's always the exceptions that prove the rule. The rule is they don't work. But MASH worked, right?
Yeah.
So everybody tried to recapture that. And in fact, The Office is a sort of example of that, not movie to TV, but trying to take a show from overseas and make it work when it's scripted is very difficult. They don't usually translate. They don't usually catch on and work. Yeah. But The Office is a great example of where it did. The times they usually end up working is when you change it. You change the name, you change the premise, and you come up with an adaptation that works for your market. It's really hard to do what The Office did and say, we're going to call it The Office. We're gonna set it in the United States, but otherwise it's going to be pretty much the exact same show.
Sure.
With just Americans instead of English people.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer is a good one. That it was helpful that Joss Whedon was
movie
there the
to
whole time.
TV show,
TV.
Well, and that was Joss Whedon all the way through too.
Yeah, he stuck around for the whole thing,
which is unusual.
Yeah, you don't usually get that. A more recent
Swamp
example.
Rat wants to pick on us for saying Bad News Bears was made for TV. It was a theatrical film according. Whatever. I don't really care whether it was made for a theater or made for TV. It was not a pilot.
Well, I assumed you're right because there were numerous Bad News Bears movies, and I figured by the time they were running out of steam on those,
I know they did TV specials too.
Yeah, it seems like something they might have done, so they didn't even throw me. But a modern
but
example.
Swamp Rat 1965. You're right.
You're right. Well done. Ding, ding, ding. What was I going to say? I think the best modern example of this working properly, and then we'll move back to The Office, is the Fargo series. Is a great example of saying, here's a format that is the right time, right place, and the right story, right adaptation to take this weird Coen Brothers movie from 1996, 97, and put it in a television format that absolutely works. It's some of the 3 best seasons of TV you can watch. So if you haven't seen Fargo, get on it. All right, The Office, though. That's what we're really talking about here.
Well, The Office is just good TV because it was different. I think we got used to with 9 seasons of the U.S. version, and with Parks and Rec, this idea of the sort of single camera documentary style sitcom seems like a thing, like it's a trope, right? Oh, you can do that.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's doing it right now, though, are they?
Modern Family, I think, fits that. They don't do the camera looking stuff
because they do the
as much.
confessional type thing.
They do that, yes. They have the confessionals, but they don't do the Jim glancing at camera stuff so much. They may do a little of that. I'm not actually sure. But Modern Family is one that's still on.
Tribeca count? It's a total spoof, right? It's airplane style humor,
right.
But
I don't know if that counts. I mean, I think it counts as a single camera effort, though. Single perspective, rather.
Yeah.
You know, that's the difference. Single camera, 3 camera. It's like having 3 dudes watch what you're doing or 1 dude watch what you're doing. The perspective of the audience, I mean. right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Anyway, chat room's cracking me up today. I'm trying to think of some other examples of that style on TV right now, and I know there's probably something, and I'm just not thinking of it. There's plenty of great comedies, single camera comedies that are like on Netflix, or Kimmy Schmidt you mentioned is a little more the 30 Rock style of comedy, and again, I think a show like 30 Rock or the Kimmy Schmidt show or any of these others, they benefit from the kind of thing The Office is, a laugh trackless, a comedy that's just a little bit different, but they also use music and other things to sort of propel things along. The Office, whether people ever notice this or not, they never use music in the show to convey emotion.
No, it's all what's it called? Diegetic sound.
Yeah. Like,
so that sound that's happening in the world that the characters inhabit. It's being played on a radio or in the elevator or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Or if it's Pam getting asked by Jim to marry him, it's from the perspective of a cameraman in a car in a rainstorm in New York, looking out of the camera or out through the window and only hearing sort of muffled sound of the proposal. And it's the lack of music that gives you the emotion there.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by that. Like, I love that whole effect. It's good in No Country for Old Men, speaking of Coen Brothers. They do that. That entire movie is all about no music. They just let the scenes, the scenery, the moments, the silence sort of dictate the emotion. And I'm a big fan of that. But The Office, both UK and US, never caved to say, to have a little sad music at a little poignant part or any of that. They just never did it. And I like that.
There's nothing wrong with using music in a television or movie show. It's that sometimes it's the correct choice not to use music, and to do an entire series without that is a challenge. It's difficult,
right? And
it's the kind of challenge that if you surmount it and do it right, it will force you to do things that are better than what you would do otherwise. For instance, the Pam and Jim proposal. If they were a show that used music, the temptation would be to just shoot them in the car with the music playing, right? And it would be a fine scene. I'm sure they'd find other ways to make it all dramatic, but they had a higher bar to clear, and so it's more impactful because it's different, and they had to figure out a way to really convey the emotion without relying on the music.
Right. There's another show I would say is inspired by The Office, and it just came to me. It's mostly very popular in Canada, but it has its fans down here. It's called The Trailer Park Boys. It's on Netflix now, so there's tons of it and probably a broader audience, but it's this kind of, I don't want to call it a dirty show, but there's a lot of swearing in it. But it's done in that style. It's documentary style, follows these guys and their dumb adventures in a trailer park in Canada, and the cameramen sometimes are involved in it somehow or whatever, but they never quite break that connection. You could argue that Trailer Park Boys stuff would never even exist without The Office. Like, this is so, I think it has a bigger influence than anyone wants to, or that a lot of people give it credit for. A lot of people think that Ricky Gervais is sort of in everyone's face and annoying these days, or I hear that sometimes. I agree, but can't deny the impact. Like, it was a big, what do they call that in a bottle? Fire in a bottle? What's
lightning?
Lightning in a bottle?
Yeah. Bottled lightning.
Fire in a bottle. Lightning in a bottle, and he caught it, and it was the right time, and now we're all into it, man. Like, it changed a lot of stuff. So I guess, I don't know, I just want to give credit where it's due, and certainly Stephen Merchant, who made a couple of cameo appearances in that first season, maybe even second series rather, for the British Office. He showed up a couple times, but he was mostly behind the scenes co-writing, and I don't think he ever gets enough credit. I think that guy's super brilliant. And they're all from Bristol, which reminds me of Terpster every time I hear anyone talk.
I want to mention, too, that the United States Office was the first and arguably the most successful because of 9 seasons, but not the only spinoff. Or I don't know if spinoff is the right word, but there was a German version that ran for 8 seasons, so pretty close, 2004 to 2012. So I guess it was the second. I guess the U.S. was the third because it didn't launch till 2005. French version in 2006. A Canadian French version for 2 seasons, 2006 to 2007. Chilean version in Spanish, 2008. A Hebrew version for Israel, 2010 to 2013. A Swedish version Kontoret, made in 2012, a Czech version in 2014, and recently a Finnish version in 2017.
Yeah, I'm looking at the German one right now on screen.
Stromberg.
Yeah, look at that.
And an insurance company, not a paper company. Most of them were paper companies, but the German one, they made it an insurance.
Well, they don't need paper in Germany. They don't.
We don't need the paper?
No paper. Wait,
the Swedish one was office hygiene.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Wait, that was the
I don't know if that's just a Swedish term for paper company, though.
Oh, there's Canadians as well, called Le Job. It was a Quebec French.
That's the French-Canadian
Oh, that's the
one,
French one you mentioned. Okay.
Yeah. Le Bureau was the French version.
What is L'Office? Oh, Chile.
La Office.
Wow. Would you ever want to see one of these, but just like subtitles?
Yeah, I'd be curious.
Okay.
The Wikipedia article on this mentions a Japanese version. There was no Japanese Saturday Night Live sketch with Steve Carell, introduced by Ricky Gervais.
Yeah.
With the cast of SNL at the time playing all the other people, and it's a guy who looks like Dwight Schrute. I think it's Bill Hader plays a guy who looks exactly like Dwight Schrute, but they're all speaking Japanese.
Oh yeah, Dwight Schrute from Bill Hader's of course.
Yeah, I mean, they're Rainn Wilson and Dwight Schrute, or Rainn Wilson and Bill Hader are brothers. So
yeah, they're like
separated at birth.
Exactly. Well, it's a interesting series, and it's having that effect on me again, where we watch an autopilot, and then I'm like, ooh, I think I'll keep going. So I'm actually going to keep going. I'm going to watch the British one again, and then I think I'll rewatch the U.S. one, at least until Michael Scott leaves. And then
Brian Brushwood has been rewatching these with his daughter as he drives her to school.
Oh, that's awesome.
So on the tablet, they watch. His daughter watches The Office, and he says it's been a great way to kind of have conversations about difficult topics that come up and things that were different back when it was shot in that decade versus the way things are now. And he's loving it. So it's kind of a cool thing to go back. I've never finished it. I still have like half the last season to watch. I got interrupted when it was actually on. Then I sold the DVR and now it's on Netflix, I think, but I just haven't got back to it.
The U.S. Office ran till, what's the dates? Oh, you have it here. Didn't you put it here?
Brian is driving, his daughter's watching. He's listening. He's not looking.
Yeah, his eyes are on the road, guys.
It's very safe.
I assumed
he's already seen them all.
Yeah, I assumed that was the case, which is why I didn't even question it. Okay, here it goes. May 16th of 2013. It feels like that ended more recently than that. Like 2013 is now a while ago.
Gosh, yeah, it's 5 years ago now.
Yeah, it's freaky to think of. But
I had a DVR back then.
You still have one, don't you? You have some kind of DVR, no?
I have a Channel Master, but I don't really use it.
Channel Master. Hold on. Why is that familiar? That sounds like
it's a DVR brand.
Well, it sounds like a workout. It sounds like workout equipment or something. I'm on the Channel Master, and man, do I feel good.
You're thinking it's Stairmaster.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, those are different.
It's not the same.
Don't try to DVR on your Stairmaster, and don't try to work out your ankles on the Channel Master.
Well, all right. I'll remember that as I commence my next workout. All right. Well, that's going to do it for today's show. Now, as we mentioned, next month, we'll do another Autopilot.
Wait. Hold on. I wanted to, before we finish up, I wanted to pitch my belief, because we got into The Office late, the U.S. one. We started watching, I think, season 3.
Yeah.
I feel that Pam and Jim are the greatest love story ever told.
Oh, jeez. You really? Okay.
I adored that story and how they told it and how it played out. And that it was so real.
Yeah.
You know, of the two people in jobs they don't hate, who kind of bond over hating the job. Jobs they do hate.
You're right.
Bond over hating the job. Find they have other things in common. Like, being now married for 15 years to someone I met at work, maybe it has, close to home, special place in my heart. But
sure. Well, I think Jenna Fisher and John Krasinski are, they had the right chemistry all along. I love their cool friendship they have outside of the show, which continues to this day. John Krasinski is on his way up the ladder of rad things at the moment, so he's having a bit of cool stuff happen. He married real well. But yeah, you know what? I can't disagree. It's certainly in In comedy, I mean, I might argue Friday Night Lights, Coach Taylor and his wife are maybe my favorite couple of all television time.
They're a pretty damn good couple. I'm not gonna dispute you on that.
They were real good, but in a comedy sense, maybe the throne is occupied.
We don't get to see their love story. If I saw Coach Taylor and his wife, meeting and falling in love, maybe I'd feel different.
Right. Well, he's all buff now. John Krasinski. He's like all buffing it and Jack Ryan'd up.
Yeah, that's right. He had to be for Jack Ryan, didn't he?
Yeah, and that other 13 Hours movie he was in, and I still haven't seen The Quiet Place or whatever it's called. Quiet.
Oh yeah, it's good.
What's it called? Be Quiet. What is it? Is it The Quiet Place?
It's or The Quiet Place. Which is it?
I don't know. I can't remember now. I'm bad with stuff tonight. Oh, here we go.
I'm bad with articles.
He is film
A Quiet Place.
A Quiet Place. There it is. All right.
It's really good. Better than Private Benjamin with Sally Field.
He's in something called that cartoon or animated series Next Gen on Netflix. He's a voice in that. I still need to check that out. Anyway, well done, Krasinski, and everyone involved in the office. You guys made a fine series. Like I said, next month, Private Benjamin is going to be our weird pilot for the month of, I guess that'll be November. Right? Yeah, because today's the 30th of October. So that's in about a month from now. Next week, on the other side of BlizzCon, normal episode of Current Geek. Just me and Tom sitting down talking about the news of the week, the kind of nerd stuff that's happening. And then the week after that, our film festival continues.
It's the Current Geek Gab episodes.
Is that the new name? Is that what we're calling it?
I don't know. I just tried it out. What do you think?
I don't know. Everyone's mad at that Gab service right now, so maybe bad.
Right. Yeah, it's got bad current events relation.
Yeah, bad connotation. Maybe the Current Geek Roundup, the Current Geek Talk Around.
Taco Tuesday, spelled TALK-O, because it's on Tuesday.
Yeah, like forecast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. So anyway, we'll be doing that. Tom, anything you want to mention before we go?
Yeah, I keep telling you there's going to be an audiobook for my book Gallium. There is. It should be out already, but I screwed up the encoding of the intro.
Dope.
So it had to go back into the chute. But that means it's going to be perfect when it finally arrives. So keep looking for Gallium on Audible, as read by Veronica Belmont.
Awesome. Also, I would like to mention to folks, if you haven't heard about it yet, you ought to check this out. Patrick Bejan and I do a little show called the Monthly Video Game Briefing, which is, for short, you just do MVGB. Say how it works. Really easy. Rolls right off the tongue. And it's not only published on the DTNS over there in the DTNS world for all those folks to get it, but it's got its own feed now. If you go check it out on whatever you play your podcasts on, search your directories, wherever you get them, you can find it. Or the easier thing maybe to do is go to frogpants.com/MGVB. I did it again. No, that's right. Video.
MVGB, Monthly Video Game Briefing.
That's it. So that frogpants.com.
Maybe we should have picked a better day.
That's fine. It's me that's the problem. Anyway, go check it out. We talk about video games from a more tech perspective, a little more industry thoughts and that sort of stuff, and we have a really good time with it. And it's a fun show. So go check it out if you are into such things. I think that'll do it for us. We, of course, will be back here, like I said, next week. Post BlizzCon, I'll be back, and we'll be back at it. If you have any comments or thoughts, in the meantime, CurrentGeek.com is the place to go. Support us at Patreon.com/CurrentGeek, and that means a lot to us. Seriously, those who already do, huge thanks to you. Thanks for supporting creators you love, and we're glad to be among them. If you haven't done it before, consider it. It's going to do it for us, for me, for Tom, and for all of you. We'll see you next time.